Okay, we are live. Think everything is working. Let me know how the sound is, or if the video is acceptable. That's all I strive for these days, is acceptable. At least for these sort of solo streams. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do, and let's pray to the YouTube gods that we don't get hit with spam bots like we did last time. All right. What's up, Last Rhino? Good to see you. Rob, good to see you. Chef Steve, always good to have you here. I see familiar faces, or familiar names, I guess. So for this live stream, we're just going to launch straight into a regular Q&A. We'll talk about, basically whatever topics come up in the chat. I turned off the super chat function for the last one. I'll probably turn it on again at some point. I just want to sort of clear up a little bit about how that gets used and make sure that it's very clear what's going on with that. But I just wanted to have a chill, live stream and just go through everybody's, or as many people's questions and comments and topics as possible without, focusing uniquely on the super chat ones. So that was the reason for that today. If you guys are looking for that, it will be re-enabled in a future live stream, but in the moment it's just disabled. Additionally, I want to, for future live streams, talk more about a specific topic or product. So I realize I have a ton of stuff to evaluate and get through, and I just don't have the time to do it all. So I'm going to be using the live stream platform to do kind of live reviews like I've done in the past, and so I'm going to try and do that a little bit more regularly. You guys are asking about this. I'll tell you about that in a second. Yeah, so as usual, if you guys are looking for more information on graphs, on measurements, evaluations, ranking lists, all that stuff is in the description. And it is to the Headphone Community Forum, as well as the headphones.com reviews and guide section. So if you want to check any of that stuff out, that's where that is. And otherwise, let's just get into the live Q&A. Let's go. I see some questions there initially, so Jesus. Yeah, I see some questions there, so let's just dive in right away. So the first one I see here is from Chef Steve saying, would the Chord M Scaler be the biggest scam in audio after ASR just tore it a new one? It did make some reviewers redundant for me. You mean the ones who were the reviewers who were saying that they liked it or that it did something? I am not the best person to be answering this question because I have not had any experience with the Chord M Scaler, so I can't tell you. I can't basically validate or invalidate the results from ASR or other reviewers. But the one thing that I will say is that it's important to have the data-driven stuff for any of this kind of stuff, because otherwise we're just relying on the subjective reports, right? So, as much as I think the subjective reports are valuable, it's you have way too many ill-defined or undefined things going on there that are difficult to express in usually the kind of condensed formats, or any format that isn't super long, to be able to understand exactly what's going on with those types of things. And that's why I think people gravitate more towards the data stuff. I haven't seen the article. I'll have to check that out. But is it the biggest scam in audio? No. there are, that's an actual thing that exists that does a thing, presumably. There are audiophile rocks and stuff like that out there. So, yeah, that's not the biggest. Someone was suggesting this to me recently, but I should do a video on like snake oil. Like, what are the snake oil things in audio? Because they're, I mean, like we're talking about like the pucks that sit on, you know, door stoppers and whatever, right? Like, we can, or you know, yeah, we can get into that at some point. And yeah, maybe I should just do a video. Let's see, next one here. Can I ask something? I can wrote it here. Oh, you just ask just questions here. All the questions just go here. What's up, Metal571? So an upgrade from the M50X BT for casual outside usage. About oh, okay. Casual outside usage. If you're not looking for an ANC headphone, well, you are looking for wireless. Okay. So if you're looking for wireless, still my recommendation goes to either the AKG N700 NC Mark II, because you can have all the little EQ filters that you want. That's one of the ones that I would use. But then for the better sounding technically headphone, it is the Momentum 3. I'm very curious. The Sennheiser Momentum 3. I am very curious how the new one is going to sound, because the Momentum 3 is one of the few that actually sounds reasonably technical for the you know, at least for ANC headphones. But it's not without its own quirks. It's not without, like, you know, its issues. So like, for example, I wore it on a plane and found that, you know, it just wasn't as comfortable as, you know, some of the other ones like from Bose and from Sony, right? And then also for the sound, you know, as much as the overall kind of, you know, zoomed out, highly smoothed tuning is pretty good, there are some fine-grained things that have sort of harmonic resonances in the upper mid-range that's a little bit it's one of those things where you just sort of got to get used to a little bit. But yeah, that's probably what I would get for a reasonable casual outside listening thing. The other thing to consider is, of course, in-ear headphones, in-ear monitors. I actually find myself having a better time just like, you know, casually outside without any ANC, without any this is just me, but like without any ANC or any you know, features or anything like that, just hooked up to a Q-Dal X5K Bluetooth to my phone, and I just use any IEMs that I have, you know, depending on what the price point is. There's so many good IEMs these days, so that's kind of what I would recommend there. Let's keep going. What in the flick is that headwear? Yeah. So I think you guys can guess from my poor soldering job on the cable connectors that this is the current prototype. It's, yeah, I don't know if you guys, if we're ready to talk about that. Well, yeah, I mean, we can talk about it, but I don't know if you guys are interested. If you guys are interested, we'll talk about it. But was Super Chat making too much money? No, Super Chat doesn't make much money. It's just Rob. So yeah, I just want to, you know, I guess clarify, I think, a little bit, make it a little bit more specific and obvious what that stuff goes to. So Zavara recommends Resolve. I Resolve ready to talk about the A90. Oh god, I saw some comments somewhere. People were like, "Oh yeah, Resolve super into like high-end DACs and amps." I'm just like, hey, somebody hasn't been paying attention to the live streams. I saw the stream where you EQ'd the 2021 LCD X and XC. Seems like it's going to be really hard to EQ headphone properly without having an in-ear microphone. I actually think so you can EQ with an in-ear microphone, but I found different and markedly worse results above like 2K or above, yeah, above 1K even, with in-ear microphones than with an official Gross rig. Because you got to remember that with in-ear microphones, unless you're using like probe mics that are like really far in, you're omitting a very significant part of the ear gain, specifically the ear canal. So like for the ones that I use and most people use, the ones that are they're what, unoccluded, I think, the ones that have the hole in them, and they just sort of sit kind of in the concha area, or like they sit kind of at the ear canal entrance. And the nice thing there is that you do get the coupling, right? So how good, like you'll see maybe a result in the bass on the rig that won't necessarily match what it is in your head, and when you use the in-ear microphones, you can get that information for how it is on your actual head, so how much bass you're actually getting. So it's really useful for that. But for EQing, I would probably look more at the graphs and then do above 5K at least by ear. Um, and yeah, like I I posted a second EQ for the LCD XC up on the Headphone Community Forum after longer time with it, and so I recommend that one instead of the one that I was using in that video or in that live stream because I spent a little bit more time dialing it in. Let's go. The headphone cables look weak. Did they come out of the headphone? It's because it's difficult to like set these in, because this is just a 3D print. Now on the other, I have two versions of this, right, with two different drivers that I'm testing, right, and on the other one they are fixed in. So this is just because this was this was a bit of a last minute soldering job. It's not very well done, to be honest. But these, it sounds really good already. Like the result that we have with this one, this is the Gold on PET driver. It's the frequency response, like the tuning is kind of close to what I'm looking for. Like it's almost like maybe Ananda like in its general sound signature, like Edition XS like. But with maybe just a little more bass uplift because the it's not a perfect seal. I need to still seal it up on the inside with the driver. And it is starting to sound reasonably detailed, but I want more. So we're gonna keep iterating on it and try some additional materials. Try some additional change a couple of other parameters, because remember that what we're doing with it is a control. We're controlling for various different parameters, right? So it's like doing what we can with all things equal and then changing one thing. So the next one we're just going to change. Well, we're going to change a lot of things in the next one, but among those changes is going to be flux density higher and lower. Test that parameter, and then also additional diaphragm materials and coatings. So, because the goal for me with this is like there's a few things that are just like not quite there with it, and I need it to be there. So yeah, measurements don't lie, people do. Yeah, but measurements also, like, measurements are great for the kind of zoomed out analysis snapshot. It's difficult when you recognize the limitations of measurements on a rig not being what that actually is at your eardrum, and that is where the biggest sort of issue and confusion comes from, and the reason why we shouldn't over scrutinize measurements that we see, because obviously if things are totally out of whack, they're totally out of whack, right? That's right. That's going to tell you a lot, and that's why you kind of have to go with a bit of a smoothed target and have that sort of like fine grained versus coarse grained approach, because the reality is that people's HRTF is going to vary significantly, and the coupling is going to be different. That you can't say, okay, because it measures like this, it's going to sound like this. You can get a ballpark, you can get close, right? Because this has a bass shelf, it's going to sound like it has more bass, right? That the basic stuff that you see from when you're evaluating for target adherence, and that's probably why people do. But we can't over scrutinize the fine grained stuff there, because it's going to shift a lot. We have to do that by ear. If you're wondering what this is that's Pepsi. Let's keep going. Just absolute batshit crazy snake oil stuff. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of things that some people think are snake oil that potentially aren't, and there's a lot of people that either think aren't snake oil that actually are. So you're going to get slightly different definitions for this stuff depending on who you ask. But so, for example, the cable thing is always fun because people say, oh yeah, cables don't make a difference. Yeah, because there isn't anything magical going on. Like that's they by and large won't make a difference. But the thing that isn't talked about is there are definitely cases where if there is a change in the impedance or something going on there that's actually a measurable change, there's a potential for a different result depending on the headphones that's being used or depending on the amplifier. So that's not snake oil. That's just a reality, right? Like that's stuff you can actually tangibly measure. But the difference between copper and silver and all of this stuff that people talk about, like I think that's largely psychoacoustic. Unless we're talking about things that actually do have, impedance differences, for example. Is it possible detail can only be found in open ear canals, or are closed and open ear canal measurements basically the same, just with different looking curves? I think you need to say more about that. Are you referring to design criteria for headphones from Hammershoy and Mahler and friends, because there's a lot of them, where they show the occluded HRTFs versus the unoccluded? Is that what you're referencing? Because I'm not quite sure. But is it possible that detail can be found in this stuff? So that, I think, gets to the question of, is HRTF matching detail, and that the answer is we don't know. Unless somebody who it sounds kind of shitty to say, but like unless somebody who's like evaluating for these things over a long period of time has those probe microphones and is like deliberately confirming and testing this, knows what their own HRTF is, like there's some research that's required to do that. Otherwise we're begging the question on frequency response. When will you get LASIK eye surgery to contest headphones without seal issues? Yeah, I need to. Well, so my other glasses, my audiophile glasses, broke, so I need to get a new pair. These are normal glasses, but I think the arms are still too thick. So yeah, I got to get a new pair soon. Have you heard the $300 audiophile fuse? What is that? No. What is that? That's the first time I've heard of this. Get a Moondrop Variations. Yeah, I've evaluated the Moondrop Variations. It's good. It's a bit shouty, but it's good. Very detailed. Has your take on the final D8000 changed after you experienced other top-line headphones? Yeah, totally. Both when it comes to the benefits of tonal balance plus the competitive landscape there. I still think it's in that upper echelon of headphones, but is it at the very top? Not for me. Right? I think for some people it might be, but not for me. There's people who really like the way that it handles the bass, because it is one of the few planars that actually they do the air film damping system thing, that concept, but generally it's one of the few planars where it doesn't change depending on the seal and the coupling, right? It's sort of built into that headphone. So it's unique in that sense. All right. There's a switch to fix the ground loop issue on the A90 Discrete. Yes! It's better. Enjoy. I haven't evaluated, so I can't tell you. I have no idea. But I bet they sound the same, like most sources do. I love my Focal Clear OG. I need to switch to closed back. Lots of upcoming travel. I can afford the Stellia, but I'm wondering if you think it's drastically better than the Celesti. Worth it? So for me, yes, because the Celesti, it's fine initially, but like the clamp was just too tight for my large head. Yes, it is better. Yeah, I think also worth considering if it's just for traveling. It's also worth considering the Noir, because they're collapsible, and so DCA Aeon Noir, it's collapsible, and they have the little carry case, so it might be more convenient to travel with. The one consideration there is that those do require more power. So I recommend like one of those like IFI X whatever I can't remember the name of it, the XDSD, whatever the IFI portable thing is. I was using one a little bit ago and it was awesome with that. So yeah. You thought I was memeing on the LCD5 connectors? No, this is our prototype. It's a little on the large side right now with the 3D printed chassis, but there's limitations for what you can do with 3D printing, and so this is larger than it will be, a little bit larger than it will be. And the headband is just a generic headband. This is not the actual headband. Yeah, sorry, GTB. I haven't heard the A90 discrete. I haven't. Even if I heard it, I need to A/B and compare. But if they fix the ground loop issue, then that's one of my major gripes that I don't need to think about with that anymore, and I'll be able to give it a green check mark, thumbs up. All right, guys, I gotta catch up here. Spicy take: Pepsi is better than Coca-Cola. That is a spicy take. I disagree. And while I'm drinking Pepsi. Resolve: you often use terms like necessary conditions versus sufficient condition. I love it. I come from logic science background, but do the masses get these quantifiers? I don't really care, to be honest, if they get it or not. I think it does, like, that's something, like, those are mistakes that I see in the in the evaluative community all the time, and even people who are like headphone engineers, like they will basically mix those two up regularly, and they'll try and find causation where it doesn't necessarily exist, or nothing actually points to causation. So yeah, I think that the evaluative side would benefit a little bit more, or from more thinking like that, like with is this a sufficient condition or a necessary condition? But yeah, I also come from that same background, so that's probably why I talk about stuff like that. Do audiophile glasses increase the SYNAD? Yes. Yes. SYNAD score goes up by about 20 points with audiophile glasses. Hey, what's up, Super? Good to see you here, man. Cables are snake oil. 30 seconds later, my audiophile glasses are broken. Yeah, no, the audiophile glasses, it's just like the arms are very thin, like so that any headphone that you wear isn't getting impacted by the arms, right? There's no break in the seal. With these ones, it's probably fine because these are like very low density foam leather pads, so they deform quite strongly, which is good, I think. The lower the density, the better, because then you can accommodate for that, and they don't mess up the bass. Thin-rimmed audiophile glasses. I just like to call them audiophile glasses because it sounds ridiculous, and it is. If you think about it that way, it really is. But they're also just lighter. I like these glasses. These acetate frames are heavier. I just have these for fashion. My go-to portable closed is the Drop DCA Aeon Closed X. Good choice. But I don't think they're still on sale. They drop down to $3.99 every so often. Good luck. Yeah, those are the best tuned closed back headphone. Period. Either the best or one of the best. Yeah, that, like, the tuning on those, the Drop Aeon X closed, not the open, but the closed. The one that's in the thumbnail for this video or for this live stream. It's nuts for the tuning there. And yeah, like the Noir, I would say, is better for some of the intangible things, right? But is it that much better when the Aeon X is? I guess it is, because the downside with the closed Aeon X closed is that it is a little bit blunted and sort of on the dull side for the trailing ends of tones. But in my mind, it's like I at that point when it's so good with it without the need for any EQ whatsoever, it kind of doesn't matter that much, or at least I don't care as much because I'm able to just like enjoy the music without being like, oh yeah, this is like a glaring thing that I gotta fix, right? um, I know there's other people who like go the other way on that. Like actually, even Precog Vision is like, yeah, like this has a wonky FR and the tuning is weird, but the technical performance is so amazing that I don't care. And I think that's totally possible as well. You know, if I missed your question, feel free to ask it again. I know I have to keep skipping forwards, so. Audiophile glasses allow you to hear music through your eyes. Yes. I was thinking, by the way, this is unrelated to anything. I was thinking, maybe on these live streams we could do like song suggestions. Let me know if you guys would be interested in that. That could also turn into something very strange. And I also don't know how it works with YouTube, and they're fairly draconian about that kind of stuff. So I want to make sure I'm on the right side of the YouTube law there. Um, but I'm thinking that might be a way that I can reintroduce the super chat as well, if people want to do that kind of thing, and then I can listen to a headphone, do sort of like a live evaluation, see how that song sounds with a given headphone. That's just a thought. Um, what can you say about the voice coil on your new headphone project? Well, this is a planar, so this is not a moving coil one. So the voice coil is you mean like the trace, right? So this one is closer to the way that the Hi-Fi Man does their trace design stuff rather than Odyssey. And there are a number of reasons for that. But yeah, basically the way that most people do planar designs, that's the way that this one is done for the trace. But we're probably gonna need to get into some unique territory with some of the new, like some of the next revisions that we're doing on the driver. So I hope to have another, like I'm probably going to do an update video on this sometime soon, and sort of where things are at, what we've gone through so far, because we've gone through a lot already. But I'm hopeful that within like a month and a half maybe, that I'll have another revision to talk about as well. But I don't know exactly when that's going to be, because there's a lot of work that kind of goes into that. And it's also one of the reasons why, like, I haven't been able to, like, ordinarily I like to produce at least one video every week, but sometimes, the stuff gets in the way, and this is the stuff that often gets in the way, because it takes a lot of time. And it's not like it's, anybody who's working on this. It's very time consuming. Thanks for all your reviews. You helped with my first headphone choice, the Sundara 2020s. I was looking for something a little more fun, but with the same detail for under 900. You could go with an OG Clear that's more punchy. That's close to Odyssey LCD2F prices. Consider that. Just make sure it's like a current revision, right? Like with the new 2021 pads. Yeah, Odyssey LCD2F and OG Clear are that, different type of thing. But you can also get into EQ and save yourself money. that's a way to do it. Does seal matter for open back velour headphones? Yeah, so coupling matters generally. So it also matters differently depending on the design of the driver. Well, depending on what the driver is, if you're talking planar or dynamic, but also depending on the design of the driver. I often talk about like resonance frequency when you break the seal, because you're breaking the system that gets created with the eardrum. And not on all planars, but on ones like these ones, with these the one and Hi-Fi Man ones as well, when you break the seal, you incur the resonance frequency, and when I say that, I really mean that you're breaking the system with the eardrum, and you get the boost in the bass. With other headphones that are more heavily damped, like what you get with these ones here. This is that Aeon X closed. With these ones, when you break the seal, you lose like all of the bass because the resonance frequency on these is much higher. It's at like 500 hertz, and they're more heavily damped, meaning that which is fine. It's because you know ideally you're not breaking the seal on these headphones, right? And so they actually have the you know the tuning. They've achieved the tuning as a result of this, but because they're also damped, they don't. It doesn't boost at 500 hertz, right? It doesn't. You don't see that boost as much, right? It's a very slight, rise and then it drops off. How far apart is the Aeon X Close versus DCA Stealth? Okay, here's my hot take. All right, the DCA Stealth is absolutely more technically impressive, right? Like by a long shot. But I think that the frequency, I actually prefer the tuning of the Aeon X Closed over that of the Stealth. Unless I wear the Stealth in a very specific position, kind of like this, right? And then I, the Stealth is better. But like, yeah, for the regular wearing position that's most comfortable for me in my head, I actually prefer the tuning of the Aeon X Closed. What tube do you recommend on lower budgets? I don't. I think solid state up until like $2,000. Solid state up until like $400 or $500 because and then just like don't bother until you get to $2,000 and then go tubes. I don't know. I it's different for everybody because there's also like people have different use cases. Like some people might be like, yeah, I really want the functionality of that RME 80i2, for example. In which case, yeah, it's like that's more expensive, obviously, but if you want that sort of like EQ functionality, I highly recommend doing that. But I think that the budget, not budget, but like let's say the mid-level solid state equipment is so good these days that I'd probably just stick with that and then do a bit of EQ. And if you want to get into the tube world, I wouldn't even bother starting at the cheap stuff. I wouldn't get the dark voice. I wouldn't get the there's so many like cheap tube amplifiers on Amazon. I wouldn't bother with that stuff. I would go with, I really like the Amp Sound Kenzie, for example. I like the Felix Audio Elise, and the Euphoria is more expensive, but it also depends on the headphones that you have. You said the Edition XS. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Amp Sound stuff personally, but I've heard a lot of tube amps that are like budget, and the ones that nothing's really made me think, yeah, I want this over a solid state, So maybe it's because they're more boutique, and so it costs more to make them. I'm not sure. Maybe their MOQs are lower. And this is from what I've experienced. Maybe there's a tube amp out there that's like $1,000 that's like really dope, and I just haven't heard it. Bum. What technical quality in headphones makes you stop and give pause and makes you think, I can't go back to a lesser headphone without this top tier technical quality? Where do you draw the line? Well, I don't know what can't go back, but would prefer not to go back. The inflection points for me are headphones like the LCD5, where I go, that is categorically not the tuning, but just like, the technical quality and like just how it sounds after EQ. That is categorically better than other stuff. What else? I know it's expensive, right? But that's like, as an example, that's one inflection point. You can scale that down, all the way down to like the Sindara, where as soon as you hear the Sindara 2020, it's like, okay, that's clearly like, I wouldn't want to go for my personal listening. I wouldn't want to go less than that in a for technical quality. It's not nothing crazy for that, but it is like one of the best, under $1,000 for a reason, right? And I think you can get better sense of space, you can get a better sense of stage, you can get better sense of impact. All these things exist, but that's sort of like the, I don't know what to call it, like that's the line in the sand there. Good question though. You just received the atriums. Any amp recommendations? So those are ones that I think Zach likes them with tube amps. So that's why I also recommend like the Amps and Sound stuff. The Kenzie is good. There's also so the pendant. We actually so ZMF is no longer doing the pendant. We took that one over, so that now exists again as the Lilu. So if you want that combination, that's there. What else? I think it's fine to go with just solid state stuff as well. But if you're gonna go, like, I'd recommend if you're gonna go with a tube amp for that, make sure it's one that doesn't roll off the bass and roll the treble. Like, I'd say go for like a neutral one, so you preserve the tuning, because that's one of the things that's nice about it is the tuning. What does it mean that Aeon lacks dynamics? I keep hearing it. Okay, so the term dynamics is this really confusing thing that people don't really understand. But once you understand, once you hear the absence of this quality, and it's just as simple as comparing like this to, an Alex, right? Something like that. You hear the bass there, or just not even the bass. It's like just the general sense of physicality. You can clearly tell that the Alex has a better sense of that. So we want to call it punch. You want to call it impact. Tyle Hertzens called it punchy, right? Whatever that is, right? It's a very ill-defined term, and I was talking to a bunch of people who were saying that it's probably actually to do more with compliance. So it wouldn't necessarily show up on a graph, but if you were to measure it at the eardrum, maybe you would actually see a difference. So that's something I'm going to explore as well. But again, it's hard. How do you measure at the eardrum without probe mics? You got to get probe mics. Can an RU-V2 be EQ'd to emulate a V3? Yes, of course. Do it by ear, though. What would you recommend as a fairly easy to drive, top of the line headphone, as I am put off by the Susvara due to the insane power requirements? Insane? It's not that insane. I'm thinking of the Focal Utopia. Yeah, the Utopia is much easier. Is like a, it's an 80 ohm headphone. It's not super inefficient or anything. So yeah, Utopia. I think also, I'm not sure what the HE1000 V2 is. I would caution you with the SE. It is very detailed, but it is also very bright. With the HE1000 SE from HiFiMan, the HE1000 V2 is probably the one that I would choose there because it's also less expensive. But still, yeah, if you're going high end and you're looking for something easier to drive, yeah, Utopia is the way to go. Have you tried the Ananda Stealth version? No, I'm very curious about that, but I expect it's going to just be a little bit brighter in the upper treble around 12K. I think that's where it's going to show up. This is my prediction. Hold me to it. Let's keep going. Okay. Take Moondrop Variation. Oh, spicy take. Moondrop Variations might be a better choice than any headphone price to performance, period. So I don't think it's a spicy take, because if the variations doesn't sound shouty to you, like for me, any of those IEMs that have, the significant amount of ear gain there, I think it's where the canal resonance is. They all sound a little bit shouty to me, including the variations. So that's what I actually EQ on the Q-Lux 5K. But if you're somebody for who that's not a problem, I think it is one of the, I think it is, I don't think that's a spicy take. It's one of the, benchmarks there. Clinical Plus, checkmark flex. I'm envious of your multiple plaques. We should just borrow one of them, put it up on the back. I've gone backwards with the headphone collection because of price / diminishing returns. For instance, once I got the HE6 SEV2, I realized that a $550 headphone on sale at around, oh yeah, that one is, yeah. I no longer need this Susvara. I mean, does anybody need the Susvara? This is the thing, right? Like, unless you're doing work, okay, even if you are doing work professionally, right, you don't need these high-end things. It's more that, like, it's more about, like, okay, how much do you care about having your music sound that good? And there is a sense in which, like, I mean, if you're no longer caring about it that much, like, get this kind of stuff, right? It's awesome. Or HE6 SEV2, or dare I say an original HE6, if you can find one. I mean, and I think I would say the same about a Sundara, right? There is a sense in which I can just put on a Sundara and just get into my favorite music and just not think about it and just have a great time. Obviously, I like the Susvara better, but, like, for just enjoyment, like Sundara, that's all I really need, right? Need. It's just want, guys. This is just luxury stuff. It's just fun. It's a hobby for a reason. Need is like, for my job, I need a camera. Right? That's need. Ananda or Edition XS if they were 100 years apart. So again, this all depends on how large your head is. If you have a large head, go with the Edition XS. If you have a small head, go with the Ananda. That's how I'm gonna, because it sounds dumb, but, like, it's to do with the way that the clamp pressure is. There's very little clamp pressure on the Edition XS, and there's more on the Ananda. So if you have a smaller head, the Edition XS might just not fit you. Or small to medium, I guess. If you have a larger head, you're going to have more trouble with the Ananda's clamp. What's the difference between HE6 and Susvara? All right. The frequency response and tonal balance of the Susvara is meaningfully better. Regardless of the pads that you put on it. The Susvara's tuning is just flat out better. But if you put on the Sundara 2020 pads and dial in a little bit with EQ, it's the HE6 is going to be better at some things, like certainly better at that sense of contrast. But the Susvara is still more detailed, yeah. But for me, it's like the HE6 is like I would take that over any headphone under 2,000, basically. So that's why I'm sad that it doesn't exist anymore. It's not something you can buy anymore. I'm talking original, not SE, not SEV2, original. It's just hard to find. I also don't recommend buying used if you can avoid it, because you don't know what someone's done to, especially with these ones where, like, people plug them into, like, spaceships. because of the speaker amp memes out there. Not sure why some people are hating on the looks of the Dioko. I'm looking at mine now; they look great. So I am somebody also for who the Dioko styling is poor. It's not. It looks really weird to me. Um, but so I've been listening to it, yeah, at the studio, and it does sound good. I think it is an improvement over the Timeless. So, or at least the way that I shouldn't say that because it has the same issues as the Timeless for me, but I think the way the bass is handled is better in the Dioko. Um, it's gonna get a recommendation for me when I eventually do. I'll probably do. Well, we have a couple people doing reviews of it. I think Precog's doing a review. I'm not sure how much he liked it. I think maybe he's less into it than I am, but yeah, I like it. Do you think you'll? What do you think of the Odyssey MM500? Have you gotten your hands on them yet? Nope, I have not. It is something that's on my radar, but again, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like it's on everybody's radar. So, um, yeah, as soon as we get one in, I will prioritize a review of that for sure. I spent the last couple of weeks setting up a new lab space, headphones.com labs, basically, to shamelessly steal that moniker from LTT. But why not? We can call it that. But it's a new headphone test environment, basically. And it's also a new studio space where I'm going to be filming stuff. And the idea is to do more filming that's just the testing of it, because I do the testing anyways, right? And a lot of the time, it takes longer to form kind of like complete judgments about things. And those will still exist to still be done. It's just that a lot of the time I still do the testing, but I don't have time to actually put together a full review, of the product. So I still want to do coverage of it. I think the way to do that is to just do videos on the testing of it. So we do, and go through the process for each product that I test. So, that's take everything from taking it out of the packaging to, listening to it, then measuring it, right? Then if it's like a closed back headphone, for example, we can do, well, even it's open, but we can do, noise isolation and leakage tests, different positions on the rig, that kind of stuff. And then, listen to it for a little bit longer, do some level match testing comparisons with other headphones, and just sort of give some commentary there. Recognizing that that's not the full complete picture or full judgment, because that does require more time with the thing, like at least 2 weeks ideally. But here I am in a situation where we have so much stuff coming through that it's like I would never be able to cover everything that I would want to, but I still want to test it. So and when I throw the graphs up on the forum for various different products that are there, I might as well also make public the process of getting that stuff out there. So that's really where a lot of my focus has been in the last couple of weeks. It's still not ready yet. I need to still. It's not this space, obviously, but I need to still put some sound damping foam in the space, both for the video, for the microphone, and also for making sure that that there's no room influence on any of the test results. LCD XC 2021 is Andrew's favorite closeback. It is at the top of my list, with EQ. Okay, that's the caveat, with EQ. Without EQ, my favorite closeback would probably be the Noir or this one. I'm trying to think if there's something else. I still need to try that EMU Teak, but I wasn't that huge a fan of the X00 Ebony, so I'm not sure. I also really like the Focal Radiance. Again, it fits me better than the Celestia. The Celestia tuning might be like, it's not as bassy, but The Radiance is more chilled out, relaxing listen. So, yeah. Uh, yeah, like if I'm indexing for comfort, it's this stuff all day, every day. The DCA Noir as well. What output do you like most for the Verite on the Kai 96? I don't use the Kai 96 for the Verite. But yeah, I would probably use. Actually, it's a good question. I think you can use either of the single-ended outputs. Be fine there. But does it really matter? I mean, yeah, you're going to change the FR a little bit if you use the 110 ohm. But like, use whatever one you think sounds best. How do you evaluate the sense of separation on the clear? It's not as good as what you get with like the Ananda or the Edition XS. That's just something that planars seem to do better at, I find at least. Dan Clark Audio Stealth versus Sysvara. Sysvara. It's more detailed. People who've actually heard those headphones will tell you the same thing. Let's see. I've put together and built 2 pairs of headphones, and the value seems to be miles beyond over-the-counter cans. Now that you're building your own headphone, do you think this is just my pride or real? Well, it depends. What do you mean? Like the value in terms of like you bought some drivers, some over the shelf drivers, because you can buy like those ones from like the Timpani ones off AliExpress, and they're not expensive, and then you can make a headphone out of that potentially. I will say it is a far more challenging thing to develop custom transducers. So if you're developing custom transducers, no, no, it is the value is like the amount of money that's gone into these already is like way more than any commercially available headphone. So I think that distinction probably matters. If you're talking about getting an off-the-shelf driver, putting it into an enclosure, you know, doing all of that yourself, then there's maybe an argument for that. But you also have to remember that people buy high-end headphones for all kinds of reasons. Like some people, they're like, yeah, I really like the aesthetic. I really like what they went for with this particular styling or whatever, right? Or this is really comfortable, right? Or use case closeback kind of thing, right? Like that's and then the tuning challenges get even more difficult with that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think maybe it's something where it's like once you begin this journey and you start to dial stuff in, you think, oh, this is great because it's like making sound and it's starting to sound good. But taking it from even taking it from 70% to 90% of the way there is like a much bigger challenge than taking it from 0 to 70 and then even more taking it from 90 to 100, right? So the fine little things that you try to perfect are the most challenging by far. Sandara, but with much more slam. What am I looking for? That's what everybody's looking for. And just EQ this Sandara, just add a bass shelf. No, but like what you're describing there is what everybody's looking for, and that's kind of what I'm trying to do with this. Kind of. It's hard to do in a planar in general, right? Certainly in open back planars, we should not expect there to be a bass shelf, so you might as well EQ them because unless you do one of two tricks, you're not going to have a bass shelf in an open back planar magnetic headphone, at least not like a distinct one. It's like there's physics limits you from doing that, so that's why you often see like with large diaphragm ones like these ones, people will talk about, well, I talk about the resonance frequency, but one of the things you could do, and this is what Critical has done on his Aria, I think, or maybe it's maybe it's HE1000, is, you basically create an artificial air gap and then use that to control the resonance frequency, and that gives you the bass boost. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the tricks that you could potentially do. Another one is just to use some sort of filter, in the cup, like not a digital one, but like analog filter. And the downside with that is that your headphone now becomes much more difficult to drive, and also it'll have an inverse correlation with output impedance. So, there's trade-offs either way you go, with that stuff. But yeah, that's essentially what I'm trying to do with this, is something kind of like Sundara with a bass shelf, or Sundara that's more punchy, or more impactful. Not even Sundara, like, ideally I want it to be more detailed than the Sundara, but like if I'm able to achieve Sundara with the bass boost, I'll be happy. I mean, I'll still want it to be like more dialed in, right? But yeah, and even more, like, that's one of the things that I've noticed the more I do this, is like, yeah, technically, like, what we have here is probably good enough for, it's probably already, at the Sundara level for, some of the more intangible qualities, and the tuning's already kind of like the Ananda. It's something where I bet that we could release this and have it be successful, if even just in its current state. But I'm not satisfied. I need it to be more. I need it to be more detailed, more technical. So yeah. Have you tried the Modhouse Argon? No, but I have tried one of the things from Ryan. So, but it was a prototype, maybe something that was a long time ago. So I'm not sure. And it sounded good what I tried from him. So yeah, he's good at tuning headphones. Let's keep going. Okay, guys, now is the time for the spicy takes. Let's go. Bring the spice. Oh, you bought drivers. Okay, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Oh, you got Fostex ones. Okay, that's a great way to do it. Yeah, I would go Timpani personally. It's like what the Aurorus audio guys did with the Borealis, right? I would get that one. It's like $15 on AliExpress, and then you can, yeah, like, there's stuff that you can do that, yeah. I recommend playing around with that if you want to get into it. It's a lot of fun, but it is also a ton of frustration to dial it in and get it perfect, right? And even way more challenging to actually bring that to market. And really expensive. But for your personal use, it's a fun DIY project to try. I would, like, honestly, if I were to do this without the intention of trying to learn about how to develop, like, what goes into developing transducers and, like, learn about the whole process, if I just wanted to make a headphone, that's probably what I would do. Almost every Saturday. I don't always comment, and I don't always stay for the full stream, but I'm usually here for at least a few minutes every Saturday. Oh, sorry, what is this? Oh, you guys are chatting with each other. Okay. In terms of absolute sound quality at around 1K, IEMs are closed back. Need something with isolation, form factor, doesn't matter. Around 1K? That's a tough question, because, like, you have around 1K, you have the Radiance, you have the Noir, you have the Celestia if it fits your head. But the Radiance and the Noir are both really good at different things. And then you also have in the IEMs, for the IEMs, you have, like, the U6T is there. The Symphonium Helios, although again that was one that I had trouble with the fit with. There's the Campfire Andromeda. I would straight up take the U6T over the Andromeda. It's no contest for me. But yeah, I mean, stuff gets pretty competitive in the IEM space. Even the Monarch Mark II from Theaudio is makes it very competitive there. So it's tough. I mean, personally, I I probably gravitate more towards over ears, just because um, I don't know, for me it's just like that's my preferred use case, I guess. But I can see an argument to say, IEMs, because they're very competitive there. Chef Steve says Aeon X closed versus Edition XS versus Focal LX. Would you be your pick? Pure sound quality. Edition XS. Because there's more you can do with EQ there. It's easier to EQ. And Edition, like Aeon Closed X is great, but it's a bit on the blunted side, right? Edition XS doesn't have those issues. And the Focal LX, I like it, but also I like that's one that I would use I would do something to kind of down tilt it, and that's more of a guilty pleasure thing. So if I'm looking for like that sort of fun punchy quality, probably the LX. God damn it, there's too many X's in these names. But for like making something neutral, clear, analytic, incisiveness, all that stuff, Edition XS for sure. Best headphone under $500. Open back, you're looking at the Sundara 2020. Closed back, you're looking at the Aeon X closed. I am gonna actually get the Sennheiser HD600 in soon to do a comparison with the Sundara and then also the R70X maybe, if we can get that one. Again, I don't know who has that right now, but that's one that's a comparison people want, so I might try that. And then obviously scale it with like, meme source equipment, like 15 grand source equipment or whatever else, just for fun. But realistically, yeah, just I'll do a cross comparison with those. But yeah, it's probably those are the two I would pick at least: Sundara 2020 and Aeon X closed. Sundara with a bass boost equals Aria Stealth? No, they're totally different designs. And they sound different. Alright. If you're putting in a spicy take, use the little pepper thing. The only thing that will solve the bass shelf issue is a second driver or built-in EQ electronics. So that's not true. If you're talking about open or closed, for starters, but even for open, it's not true, because if you take an analog filter, you can add a bass shelf. You can do that. So it's not like digital, right? But the other thing you can do is you can control the resonance frequency acoustically, which doesn't require any filter. And that's probably the ideal way to do it. The only trick there is, it basically puts a certain amount of constraints on what you can do with the rest of the tuning, and that causes some limitations. But that doesn't mean that you can't achieve the desired result. I think you can. You can't be as specific, all right? That's the advantage of the electrical filter. You can't be as specific. But it's the benefit is, again, it's way easier to drive. So, or it's way more difficult to drive with an analog filter in there. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do yet with this. I've tried both methods. The one that sounded the best was with a filter, because I could be more surgical with where it was. So maybe that's what I'll do. But we've also tried it with a deliberate leak built into the 3D print, which was interesting. So we'll have to try that again with the next driver revisions. Let's see. If you're looking at the LCD XC 2021, go with the updated EQ, not the one that's in the original post. All right, the updated EQ is much better. Let's see. The only downside with that one is it's heavy. You should put together a pure snake oil system and see if it sounds and see what it sounds like. Best measuring versus worst measuring. I love that idea. I love that idea. And we have an ABX box to be able to compare. Well, that's mostly for like amplifiers, like in source equipment. But yeah, that would be a ton of fun to do. I love that idea. Buying all these headphones. Spicy take is buying all these headphones is fun, but at the end, everyone just retires with an HD 580. So here's the thing, right? The HD 580 is good. It's a little shouty. And I'm going to get raked over the coals for saying that, but it measures that way too. It's a little shouty. So we have one in the office. What sort of chain are you listening with while building your headphones for subjective impressions? Do you feel like it matters? So what I'm using right now is the Bioelectric HPA V550 Mark II. I think it's Mark II. The reason why I'm using that one is it's very versatile. It has all the power in the world, but also all the outputs that I would need. Low output impedance. And it also has outputs for speakers. Like, it's just very versatile. So that's the one that I'm running with when I'm working on this. Not at home, obviously. At home, I'm just using a THX 888-1 and which barely has enough power. But then also the Kaina HA6, which is better for this. Yeah, because this needs quite a bit of power right now. Are you going to buy the Dioko? We have one in the studio. Or in the lab, I guess I should call it. Spicy take. LCD1 is the best headphone. Forever searching for the super LCD1. It seems resolution always comes with the sacrifice of overall balance and fatigue. I personally think that the Sundara 2020 is better than the LCD1. But for tonal balance. But that's not... I don't think that's... like, what you're indexing for there, what you're caring about is tonal balance, and I think that there's truth to that. Like, it matters. People will kind of forego that a little bit if something is really unique in one particular area, but I think for overall ultimate just listening enjoyment, I think that does matter a lot. It's the most important thing. What do you think is the sweet spot when it comes to DACs and their diminishing returns? It's a tough question because I recommend the $200 or whatever $250 DACs all the time, right? That are like they're balanced. They have balanced outputs. They have all the functions and features that I personally need. But then there's somebody out there who's like, yeah, I really want a remote for mine, or I really want it to have like wireless functionality. I'm like, well, okay, but then that costs more, or I need a display or something like that. Or I need some particular input or whatever feature that the ones that I personally would use don't have. So, but as far as sound quality is concerned, as long as you don't have anything that has, weird results, like with what is it, intermodulation, distortion, any of that kind of stuff, you're probably fine. Like at the studio, I use the Matrix X Saber Pro, and that's sort of like what I consider to be like an objectively, well-performing setup with the Bioelectric HPA V550 Mark II. It's the point there though is that it is nothing esoteric, nothing weird. Like I have also in the studio like the EF1000 from Hi-Fi Man. I've also got the Bakun Amp 13R. These are all things that are meant to do something unique and weird and different. That's going to have a particularly good pairing with the given headphone. And sure, I like that stuff too. But for when I'm trying to do measurements and when I'm doing my testing and developing this, I want it to be as unaffecting as possible, right? Just lots of power. And that way I know that when I'm doing my testing, I don't have anything else that's affecting it, basically. Okay, let's keep going. Oh, the Edition XS I think is better than the Sundara, yes, but it's by default, the default tuning. I think the Sundara's tuning is better. Yeah, but Edition XS has more flexibility and is better for soundstage. It's a very wide sounding headphone. I don't understand. She's a spicy take, apparently. I don't understand why people downplay the importance of cables. I just slapped one of those bad boys on my headphones, and the sound really came alive compared to just listening to my keyboard. There it is. Yeah. Spicy take. Do you think regular headphone use can cause hair loss in men? Yes. Suggestion: name the new headphone X Resolve X. I was gonna actually name it the Void, but then Moondrop came out with their headphone called the Void, so now I have to call it the Deep Void or something, the Bottomless Void. R70X is the easiest headphone to listen to. I find it grainy. It's not for me. I would take the HD6XX over the R70X every day, basically. Even though it is good. The tuning for the R70X is excellent, but I find it just a bit grainy. I think Metal 571's take on that is correct. Here's another spicy take. When they finally make a perfect headphone, no one will like it, and they will find it to be boring. Well, presumably, if it's the perfect headphone, somebody will like it. You mean like the perfect measuring headphone? This is why headphones should be evaluated against the Harman target, but not tuned to match it. Thoughts on the Moondrop keyboard with the Moon River 2 built in? I think it's cool. I like that stuff. I like stuff like that where it's like, I no longer need this big thing on my desk, right? Like it's just in the keyboard. If the keyboard is good, I have no idea. Sorry. Blessing 2 is overrated. False. Yeah, that's a spicy take. Blessing 2 is overrated. I mean, if you're looking for something more unique or weird, different, it's not. It's just super normal. It has a 6K peak though, and or at least the way I hear it, has a 6K peak. Not everybody heard that. Spicy take is Bayers aren't harsh, they are just detailed. That's a spicy take for sure. Yeah, I have a hard time with that. Although I think we might get some more. It's been a while since I've evaluated some Bayers, so we might get some in and do like a big whole Bayer dynamic comparison shootout thing. I was fairly impressed with the technical capability of the Tiger 300R. Though that was, well, I don't know, like the tuning still had its issues, right? Like, so I don't know if it makes up for those issues, but it was better than the 900 Pro X, for example, for detail. So the 900 Pro X is just this dull, blunted sounding thing. It's not good. Any worthy upgrades for the Sundara? I'm looking for options. Yeah, there's upgrades. Well, now the Edition XS exists, but it's not like it's similar enough, right? So, you know, the bigger upgrades would be something like the Focal Clear OG or the LCD 2F, and then EQ that a bit. Those would be the bigger upgrades. The 580 isn't shouty. What are you listening to it on? It is shouty, and it measures that way. But not everybody's threshold for shout is the same, right? So, you know, as an example, right? It is not meaningfully more shouty than a 600, for example, right? But I personally would also EQ that one, if that makes sense. So, and yeah, like I could show you the measurement. Like it is more 3K energy than the treble balance above it, right? So that means that it is more forward in that region. But does that mean you're going to hear it that way? No, because that's the strongest part of the ear gain. And so if you have an ear canal such that it doesn't affect you, it's the same thing that I say with the Moondrop variations and all those other ones, right? If they are well tuned, there's a good chance that for me they will be a little bit shouty. Let's see. Have I reviewed the Phonitor XE? Nah, it's in the thumbnail because I thought it looked cool. But I want to have, before doing any, conclusive judgments on amps and DACs and any of that kind of stuff, I want to have the ABX running. I want to be able to measure them. I want to be able to give more complete and comprehensive data for any analysis of source equipment. Otherwise, what is this? Like, I can tell you it's the best sounding thing in the world, or I can tell you it sounds, terrible. But I have, in both cases, there's nothing that backs that up. So, I need to be able to actually, demonstrate this stuff. If it does sound different, or if it does sound better, or if it sounds worse. So, otherwise, I'm just saying take my word for it. And while I'm happy to say that, for an entire category of evaluations, I don't want it to just rely on that, Let's continue. Focal and Hi-Fi Men's on non-transferable Focal and Hi-Fi Men's non-transferable warranty policies, anti-consumer, and brushed by all audio reviewers. I prefer transferable warranties too. But I think there's a lot of, I don't think it's just Focal and Hi-Fi Man. I think it's like many companies are like that. I wish that more companies had better warranties, to be honest. The warranties from are Odysseys transferable? I don't remember. There's one company where they are. But I wish, more companies were doing stuff like that. Is Sennheiser's transferable? I'm not sure. But to call out, a particular headphone and say, this doesn't have a transferable warranty. I mean, it's like you're gonna have to say that about most products in general. I think. So I don't really care that it's not something that gets raised, or the warranty question is not something that gets raised. It's probably worth raising if there is an exception to the norm, and you're like, this has a transfer warranty. It's like, that's awesome, The honest headphone guy in the CanJam Singapore video inspired you. The honest headphone guy. Who's the honest headphone guy? We're going through the spicy takes here, guys. Being the headphone guru that you are, your headphones should be an S tier headphone. It depends on we're gonna cross the bringing it to market question when we get to a point where I'm happy with the sound. I'm not gonna release something that I don't think sounds amazing, right? But whether it's S tier, that's probably going to need, if we release it at like $1,000 or $2,000, like, it needs to be really, really good. But would you call a Sundara 2020 S tier? I probably wouldn't, and so, but that's okay. It's only $300. So it's a little bit related to the eventual price if we figure that part out. Is iFi ZenCan sufficient to drive a Nanda? Yeah, that's enough. You don't need more. The Nanda does not require much power at all. Okay, let's keep going. Spicy take. DAC and amp synergy makes a huge difference in sound quality. DCS Lena is a perfect example of this. We actually have the DCS Lena in the studio, and I am going to hook it up to the ABX and play around with that at some point. I'm going to say here, though, with the general position that you have there, make that judgment after doing level matched blind comparisons. See how that goes for you. I'm not going to say they don't make a difference, because I think they do make a difference. I just think the difference is so insignificant for the most part. The existence of HD 600, 650, and Edition XS makes new Bayer Dynamics redundant. Like the 900, like the Pro X ones, I completely agree. I like. I would not choose. I mean, the closeback has its use, right? Like all closebacks do. But the open, I don't see. It's not something I would choose to do. Spicy take. Time to stop factoring in how a headphone EQs in your reviews. That grading curve seems to be outdated these days. Grading curve? You mean the Harman target? This is the most widely used research that exists. But to the other part of that, I am thinking that the way stuff needs to get evaluated in the upcoming ways that I'm evaluating it, like with the more sort of in our lab environment, where it's less about like the long-term judgments where I've had an opportunity to really dial in EQ and stuff like that. I'm happy to exclude that because I think the more accessible, like the larger our audience is, the more people who are watching what we're doing, the less we should expect people to be comfortable doing it, if that makes sense. Because, a lot of the folks who are here, are going to tell you the exactly opposite. Like, what's the point of buying a headphone if you're not going to EQ it? Like, any headphone needs EQ, right? They're going to be totally happy getting into it, and because every headphone can be personalized more closely to your own HRTF or to your own taste, right? That's just true. So you might as well do that. But I don't think we should expect people to be at that level. I don't think we should expect people to be comfortable to do that or comfortable doing that. So the more larger our audience gets, the more EQ is something that is the less EQ is going to factor into an evaluation. But as it is already, if something has a totally normal frequency response and the only EQ adjustment that I make is in the bass, that's much, much better than if I have to do adjustments in the treble or adjustments above 3K. If I have to do adjustments above 3K, I'm scowling. Like, do better. So yeah. If you listen to the Monarch Mark II loud enough while listening to the Inagata Davida, you will levitate about a foot off your chair. All right, I have to try that. That's a great. The recording quality that's really bad though. It's a good song though. Or it's a unique song. I'll put it to you that way. Same with Child in Time. Sennheiser needs to get rid of the IE900 and build the HD900. Yeah, I'm on board with that. Anyone who is married for more than 10 years becomes immune to shouty headphones. Jesus Christ. Oh, no. That's not okay. Come on, man. You can't say stuff like that. Best audiophile rocks under 2K. The ones that find you. Any open back dynamic driver that can handle a big bass shelf. If you're going to be doing lots of EQ to the bass, I would avoid the Focal headphones, because then you're going to reduce the volume where the excursion limit hits. So I would probably go with the Fostex Philphone. Get the Philphone. That's the way. Maybe the Aurora's audio stuff as well. I'm not sure where the excursion limit is on that stuff. Let's keep going. Amplifier is the thumbnail. Aw, hell nah. I knew someone would get triggered. It's just because it's for fun, guys. I like the way that it looks. It's got VU meters. I mean, that's awesome. And again, same thing. It's fine if other people want to do subjective evaluations of amplifiers and source equipment and stuff like that. I don't want to do that without having an ABX comparison with other stuff. Otherwise, I can't even be confident that I'm selecting against my own placebo, my own psychoacoustic effects, or volume, where the volume's at, or whatever is. The differences are so subtle with all this stuff. Even if I think there are differences, it's so subtle that, whatever has happened to me over the course of the day may have a just as meaningful of an influence. Or I guess I would argue that always has an influence. But you get the idea, right? Where it's like, you can't be confident in your assessments or your judgments about things unless you have something to anchor it to. And that's why, I mean, as much as I don't want to overinflate A/B comparisons, because again, I don't think that that's sufficient for an evaluation. I don't think just doing an ABX is sufficient. But there are tangible benefits to doing that, where you realize, kind of. You realize sort of the effects of or to put it another way, even in situations where there is a meaningful and measurable difference, you realize that it's such a insignificant difference, in the majority of cases. There are cases where things are going to be much more meaningfully different. Like, again, if we're talking about tube amplifiers, current-based sources, things like that, sure. But for the most part, I think we have a tendency as a community to overinflate the significance of source equipment. Somebody can clip that. Let's keep going here, guys. I need more peppers. Headphones / IEMs with wonky tonal balance but great timbre and dynamics are better when EQ'd than well-tuned headphones / IEMs. That's an interesting concept, because I know that there's people who would say, if a headphone is well tuned, it is going to have good timbre, right? But I think I get what you're saying, in the sense that if you're talking about like the material or transducer related effects that are difficult to identify in coarse-grained target adherence evaluations for frequency response, and in that sense, I actually kind of agree with you. It's a blood-curdling scream outside. Yeah, I do agree with you there. But I think that statement requires that kind of nuance where you distinguish between, having a good tuning generally and how that affects the timbre of cymbal hits, for example, versus planar magnetic timbre versus biocellulose dynamic driver timbre, that kind of stuff. And again, all of this is very likely to be frequency response, but it's not to say that those transducers aren't producing that effect, right? So I would watch that video that I did a long time ago on what timbre is, or like kind of like distinct, like pulling apart those two elements of it, because there is a sense in which a description of one is a description of the other. It's just that you need to make sure that you're correct, you're more specifically identifying which part of it you're talking about. All right, another spicy take here. HE650 is better than most ZMFs when scaled with the right amp. See, I've only heard like 3 ZMFs, and also I haven't heard them out of all the amplifiers. Same with HE650. So my gut reaction to that is to disagree, but maybe you have a combination in particular that is, the right thing for you. Let's see. Okay, JTB, that's not a spicy take. That's just a question. Come on, man. You're cheating. Ross and Red Zero versus Odyssey headphone. Depends on what you're like. If you want something with unique custom inlay designs, Ross. That's the whole thing with Ross is that it's like a customized thing, right? But if you're comparing that against an LCD5, actually, there is a sense in which a Rad Zero would be better than an LCD5 for people who don't like shouty headphones. So it really depends there. But this is also why, for me, the EQ thing is so important, because it's like, yeah, like, of course I'm going to EQ those headphones. They're amazing. I've said this before. The headphone that I would buy today, if I were buying a high-end flagship top-of-the-line headphone, would be the Odyssey LCD5, and I would EQ it. It's that simple. It's like, yeah, obviously for the no EQ gang, I'm going to recommend other headphones ahead of it, even much less expensive headphones. But that is what I would buy today, if I was, wealthy, because they're expensive. Yeah, it just does things that are so unique. It pushes the envelope on the technology for this stuff, and it can handle. I mean, I know Metal had a harder time EQing it than I did, but I like more ear gain than he does. So I mostly just boosted the treble. I did reduce the upper mids a little bit, but yeah. And it's light, it's small, no nonsense. It looks good. On our unit, the jacks didn't fall out. I need to get the wider headband though, so Odyssey's probably not watching, but if they are, hook me up with the wider headband, because then ours is just a demo unit anyways, so it's not one that I personally own. Come on, guys, you can't just throw in the peppers and just ask for purchase advice. I haven't heard the EF400, but I would love to get one in, so I need to actually, that's a good reminder for me to reach out to Hi-Fi see if they can send that over. I feel like you need the context for the headphones I'm wearing right now. So this, I said this earlier, this is the one of the prototypes that we're working on right now, the planar magnetic prototype. So you can see it's 3D printed cups with a fairly generic headband. And some big leather pads. The tuning for this is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's kind of like it's in the Ananda Edition XS kind of ballpark for the tuning right now. But I need to dial it in a little bit more, and so yeah, there's more iteration that's needed. But it is sounding like everybody have had come in and try it. They've all been like, yeah, it sounds really good. So it's a good, I'm not gonna say it's a good start because we've been working on this for a while, but it's at a place where it's starting to get more competitive, I think. The Gashelli Labs J2 DAC is hard to beat for the money, even after adding the USB module. I have no experience with any of that stuff. Use a poultice instead of EQ? What? You're just like on the headphones? Yeah, I mean, that's obviously ideal. To actually give you guys a sense, I actually have taken apart headphones, closed back headphones, and tried to like mess with damping using this kind of like foam stuff to try and change a frequency response so that I wouldn't have to EQ it. So that's how much I would rather not EQ. It didn't turn out well. I did improve things, but it didn't make things so that I didn't have to EQ them, so I just sort of gave up. But that is better. Like this one, the goal with this is to have it be, something where there's no need to EQ. Like EQ is going to be purely just a preference thing. There's nothing going to be weird, in the frequency response for people. Ideally, that's what I'm shooting for. All right. Okay, here we go. Some more spice. Let's go. people that keep hunting for better source equipment tells me they are not happy with the headphones that they have bought. So that's kind of where I'm at with that stuff as well. It's like you're basically playing into the sunk cost fallacy, right? Where you're like, oh, I want to get the best out of this thing that I bought, which is not a bad thing to think about, right? I want to get the most out of my purchase. How do I do that? Okay, I could upgrade my source. Maybe that's one way to do it. But the reality is that that's not like the $400 or $600 or $1,000 that you spend there isn't going to make it better, potentially. There's exceptions to this, but generally it's not going to make it better than if you just put all of that money towards a different pair of headphones that might suit your preferences better. So I understand the impulse, or the desire, right, to upgrade your source equipment and, to improve, to get the most out of your headphones, right? That makes sense. But I think what people miss is that it's not proportional, right? The differences are not proportional. And as long as you're okay with that, I think go ahead, source meme all day. Just go ahead, chase that dragon. I'm not gonna and the other thing too. I was saying this on our forum a while ago because I know there's people who disagree with me about this, and that's fine. But if you are at a different place in your sort of like audiophile journey, like if you are already buying like high-end headphones and you have multiple high-end headphones, I think that's probably when it starts to make a lot more sense to start going into this the source equipment rabbit hole, and like having all kinds of fun with different pairings, output impedance synergies and whatever, right? Start doing that then. But my caution here is more for people who are brand new to the hobby, or they're just trying to get the one pair of headphones that's going to be their main pair of headphones, and they want to get something that's good value, right? For those people, I think you're better off putting, and I don't think this is like a spicy take, I think you're just better off putting money into headphones. Get a source that's good enough, spend $400 on source equipment at most and then spend the rest into the headphones and figure out what headphones you actually like, because it's going to make such a much bigger difference than going from one source to another, unless you're talking about tube amps or output impedance things or whatever else, right? Very specific synergies that may exist out there, but at that point, that's what I'm saying, like if you're already there at that point, you already have a sense, ideally, of the headphones that you like, and the type of sound signature that you like. In the near future, this hobby will be obsolete by a chip that goes inside your head and matches your exact HRTF. That could happen. You could have like a cochlear implant or something. Alright guys, I gotta catch up here. Hi-Fi should be ashamed for copying Sony with the HER10P without acknowledging them. I think they did acknowledge it. I think that, didn't they say that they were like, yeah, we can do this because the patent's expired? Alright, spicy take. Sound is an objective hobby. Deviations from frequency response. Okay, deviations in the frequency response results in detail loss due to forward and backward auditory masking. Sound is, so first of all, there's a couple things in there. Sound is an objective hobby. So I think you need to rephrase that. There's an element of what you're saying that is true, which is the fact that humans have ears, right, means that there is a certain norm that we should expect to be objectively true, right? But that norm has boundaries. Even with, and this is what I'm going to say, read the rest of the Harman research, because even within the Harman research, you can see the cluster analysis. Read the paper on segmentation. That's the one that is going to change your mind on this a little bit. Where the second part of your comment here, deviations in the frequency response results in detail loss due to the forward and backward auditory masking, is just outright false, because there are places where headphones frequency response should deviate from, there's times when it should deviate depending on where you fall in the segmentation, but there's also times when it should there's also like every time it should deviate in certain places, because again, unless your goal is to have a headphone sound like not wrong for most people rather than most right for you, you're going to have you're going to you're going to need to do some sort of EQ for your own HRTF, or pick a headphone that more closely matches your own HRTF, assuming that that's desirable, right? That's always the caveat there. But deviations in a frequency response results in detail loss. No, like major deviations, yes, and also lower frequency deviations. So, for example, if you have deviations in like a boost somewhere around 300 hertz, that's absolutely going to cause issues. But if you have deviations above 5K, you actually are, depending on the deviations, there's a chance that those deviations are actually closer to your HRTF. So that's why it's a little bit of a crapshoot up there, and why I'm always going to say headphones should be evaluated against the Harman target, but never tuned to match it. And this again gets into that big thing about like the position. The as you change the position, the features look smoother, but the reality is that they don't go away. So for the same reason that if you consider that the frequency response is highly, or the target is highly smooth and the frequency response is very fine grained, you don't know what the actual features should be for any individual above a certain point in the frequency response. That means that you can't say these statements like deviations to frequency response result in detail loss is just false, because you can't know that for sure, right? There are places where that will be true, but there are also places where that will be false. Many audiophiles don't listen to music or have bad taste in music, and therefore look to their gear to enhance their listening experience. This is an interesting one because so I think that there is absolutely a sense in which a certain way of listening to music. I don't want to say people have bad taste in music, because obviously like bad tastes in music exist. For what I like, right? But somebody else is going to say that about what I like. So that's a different question. But I do think there is a way that people listen to music where some of this stuff matters less, and there's other ways where some of it probably matters more. And this might also be one of the reasons why the preference research with the 2018 study, 2019, but the one where they included more untrained listeners, I think that might also be one of the reasons why there's a more significant bass shelf there, because it's less about like genre preferences and more about the way that people listen to music, and I think that is different, depending on what music means to people, if that makes sense. I guess that's a little bit of a flowery description, but I think you kind of get what I mean there, right? There's some people who are like very attentive and paying attention to the music, and they're really engaging with it mentally. Other people, it's just in the background. So it's hard to know really how people are listening. Have you seen the ASR review of the Chord stuff? I have not. No. I don't really pay that much attention to ASR because, I mean, there's good stuff there, but there's also like you start reading through some of the threads, man, it gets crazy. So I just try and plow on and not really pay too much attention to that stuff anymore. Ever since that guy tried to discredit me, it's like you can see that what they're after internet points more than anything else. They don't really care that much about the truth, or searching for it, I guess. The fact that someone like you can get the tuning right shows that there's no excuses for Odyssey. Well, here's the key, though. I'm the one who's influencing the tuning of this, so obviously I'm gonna like the tuning, right? Someone else might be like, I don't like the tuning of the Ananda or the Edition XS. I prefer the way that the Odysseys are tuned, right? So I don't. That's also, what do you mean that someone like me? Do I not headphone? Pineapple belongs on pizza. I like pineapple on pizza. I didn't used to, but I like it. All these peppers making the chat box very pretty. Agreed. I'll die on this hill. YouTube music is better than Spotify. It's not. That's not. Nope. But by all means, feel free. Andrew, you are keeping me up at night and making me lose sleep. It is all your fault. I'm so sorry. That ASR dude has mad Dunning-Kruger syndrome with his new test equipment. Is there new? Again, I haven't been following that. Different mastering of the album matters, but lossless files are a waste. Yeah, that's not spicy. MQA sounds better. Oof. I'm really like, I want to get my Qobuz account back. Someone reach out and help me with that. Majority of people listening to streaming services like Tidal and Qobuz is spending more than like $2,000 on headphones setups. Does it make sense? Yeah. I mean, you can listen to FLAC or CDs all you want, but like, it's not like the difference between a Susvara and a Gold Planar isn't relevant. If you're just listening to Spotify. Hell, even if you're just listening to YouTube music. Rizal's voice is the same cadence as does the BC Minister of Health. Oh no, I hope not. God. Wait, Rob, are you from BC? Jeez. I forget if I asked that before. Grados sound great. Oof. Man, you are full of spicy takes. Actually, no, it's true though. I know people who like the Grados sound, right? Like, this is in so many ways the point of the Harman research, was because DF-HRTF wasn't, that may be more anatomically correct, right? But it's not what people actually prefer to listen to. And so that's why the segmentation paper, I was talking to Sean about this, like, people haven't read the segmentation paper. They don't know that was sort of the cluster analysis that gets done. That goes so far to like helping alleviate people's worries about like, oh, this one target is like the gold thing that everybody is like, revering. It's like, no, that's not what it was about. That's just what the largest group was. So there's all kinds of other preferences that exist. Andrew's capable of 24-hour stream. I want to do more streaming with like a gaming stuff. I want to get into that world more. I never have time to do that kind of stuff, but I'd like to, because I know that's there's a massive audience out there that I'm not speaking to. And the way I approach this stuff, I always felt like, okay, I wanted to get better sounding stuff, and I didn't know what was even out there. I didn't even know that like this headphone world existed, because like there wasn't any coverage of any of that kind of stuff in the communities the online places that I frequented when I was younger, right? And then that's sort of what drew me into places like Headfi and SBAF and wherever else, right? And it's because that's where those conversations are taking place. So I feel like if there's anything that I can do to sort of like reach some people who just don't know that this stuff exists, the better. And that's why I want to get into that gaming world. So maybe I'll do not a 24-hour stream. That's insane. But a longer stream with gaming stuff, sure. When the babblefish, what is a babblefish, hits the market, it should have EQ. I don't know what that means. There is no replacement to the AudioQuest Nighthawk. Thank God. No, hey, if people liked it. My boss described that once as the cilantro of headphones, or maybe it was the Night Owl. Anyways, it was one of those, and I think that's a perfect description. Some people, they love it, but also people hate it. Synergy with amps and DACs is overrated. I mean, it's not overrated if there's something that's like really screwing it up. Like if you use a focal with like a super high output impedance source, there's a chance you can actually hit the driver excursion limit. That's so in that sense it's not overrated. But yeah, I mean the idea about magic synergy stuff, I mean, it may exist, but I don't think that that's something. I don't know, it's not something I'm interested in chasing, if that makes sense. And I think for most people, the difference is so insignificant that it probably won't matter. This is why I mean, I know I talk about this all the time, and that's why it's so funny to me when I sometimes see commentary out there being like, "Oh yeah, that Resolve guy, he's super into like high end DACs and amps and stuff." It's like, you clearly haven't been paying attention, because I am not. With that said, I do, when I hear something that I do feel is different, that I feel like that matters to me more. And there are the point about all that though is that I don't think there's no magic anywhere. There's nothing that's like not understandable by looking at it in a particular lens. And one of the ways to do this is with, at least for this, to see how much the subjective stuff matters, is to just use an ABX. And so again, I don't want to overinflate that, but like what that's been revealing to me is that, even when there are differences that I can tell, that pretty clearly tell with a given headphone, those differences are not that substantial. And oftentimes the bigger difference is volume. Listening to this stream only with a subwoofer is audiophile nirvana. Amazing. I used to be an ASR cultist, then I bought a Modi multi-band. Reviewer variation is profound these days, and to a newbie it is overwhelming. This is something that I really hope to improve. I realize that, like, because of what I care about in this hobby, I guess, in the enthusiast communities, because of what I personally am interested in, that really kind of spills out and is sort of borne out in the evaluations that I do. When I need to recognize that, like, people, like the vast majority of people, it's like not something they're even thinking about, like, or it either doesn't matter to them, and so it's overly technical, I think. And so in upcoming stuff, I'm going to try and make it a little bit more accessible. The more I learn about this stuff, the more I want to get into the technical stuff. But the reality is that, like, the majority of people don't care. They just want to know if it sounds good. So, or like what's good, what's competitive. Is it good value? Is it good at these things that they care about? Which is a bit. I mean, to me, it's like, yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a shame, but at the same time, I totally understand that. And so, yeah, I would like to speak to more people in a way that allows them to have better experiences at the end of the day. So I need to do a better job of that. I think it also involves being more assertive about stuff. Like being like, like there's always that caveat of like, oh yeah, this is how it is to me. Maybe it might be different for you. That's all true because of different coupling and HRTF effects, right? But like, I can't have in every video say, yeah, because of coupling differences in HRTF effects, and differences in variation, especially in the upper treble frequencies. Like that does, like, people who are brand new to this stuff, they're like, what are you talking about? So, yeah. Let's keep going. You really in a big issue right now. You need help. Help with what? You decide between 58X, X2HR, HE4XX, DT990, using for gaming and music. Not primarily, but 100% imaging needed. Okay. Not the 58X, not the X2HR. 4XX, maybe? I don't know why you would get that over the HEX4, though. DT990, if you... I can't. It's got good imaging, but it is also... Yeah, I mean... Some guy is super into that after like 6 months of pad burn-in. Is sure, okay, but No. I think if it were me, I was looking for a gaming headphone with good imaging, I would look at the 560S. This is actually a question for Chrono, not me. He's the FPS tryhard. Probably the 6XX. Sorry, not 6XX. The 560S, and then I'd also consider the Tiger 300R, which I know is based around the 990, but I found that the treble peaks, for whatever reason, were not. They're still there. It's I can't like. I'm trying to think, like, was it that bothersome? It was still bothersome with the treble peaks on the Tiger 300R, but it wasn't. It didn't feel like I was gonna lose my hearing or or listen. Yeah, didn't feel like I was listening at two different volumes. I'll put it that way. And at least the Tiger 300R was detailed. I imagine that the DT990 is also reasonably, if it's the same platform, same driver, certainly better than the 900. Don't get the 900. Otherwise, I'm just wondering if a DT880 would make sense. But yeah, I personally would not even consider most of those because they have issues. Like the X2 HR is very grainy. 58X is narrow, and grainy. Its tuning is okay. 4XX, I don't have that much familiarity with the 4XX, so I'd supplant that with the X4 or 400 SE, depending on who has the better deal at the time. Yeah. But I would put the 560S in that category for consideration. Do you think the future of headphones is Bluetooth headphones rival any wired setups and high bandwidth streaming services like what Apple is working on? The future depends how far into the future. Maybe. Right now, I still haven't heard any of the wireless stuff that competes, but I'm curious to try that new Edifier Odyssey thing, closed back thing, which is interesting. Headphone manufacturers should stop marketing pure beryllium driver or biocellulose driver or gold trace. It's not the material that matters, it's the effect the material has. But then in that, doesn't that mean that that it is the material? I think I get what you're saying, right? Because it's not that it has a pure beryllium driver or a biocellulose driver that it sounds good. It is a consequence of, like, it's the tuning consequence of the use of that stuff, right? That it can be used for good. It can be used, it can be implemented in a way that's not great, right? There's biocellulose headphones that are not great. Pure beryllium headphones, I'm sure, that are also not great. So it's the way that stuff gets used and built around. But I would say that I don't know if I would say take that off of the marketing material. Marketing material is one thing, right? It's not something that I personally pay that much attention to. It's people do it because it's effective, but they're not lying, right? It's not like they're. I suppose that what you're hedging against here is like the overinflation of certain buzzwords, and in that sense, yeah, I agree. I shouldn't be using it for that. There are audiophile VTubers. Andrew should get into that. Okay, fine. somewhere out there, if somebody watches this, they'll know why that's funny. There's a sale on spicy peppers today. Yeah. Harman Research is a bunch of hullabaloo. If you have that opinion of it, read the research. Read all of it. If you think that, before making that statement, read it. Because I wager the majority of people who have that opinion, the vast majority, haven't read it. Or they'll have read some snippet, or like a headline. I've come to the conclusion that Focal headphones are a bit overrated and overpriced. I had a chance to try the Utopia, and the treble was very hot and murdering my eardrums, amp dependent. That's interesting because on all of Utopias that I've heard, the treble's actually lower than the target. But yeah, I'm not sure. I know that there were some. It might be a pad change too, or something like that. I haven't dug into that personally, but I've never had any issues with the Utopia treble. I just fool you into thinking this is a spicy take. Yeah, of course. You guys are doing this now. Yeah, purchase advice question. Okay, best IEM for I'm indulging you here, Miruko. Best IEMs for EDM and rock under 1500. Lots of fun factor. For me, it's the U6T. That's the one I like the best under 1500. But somebody else out there is going to say the Unique Melody Mest, I'm sure. Somebody else might say the Symphonium Helios. But for me, yeah, it is the U6T. Yeah, with the M15 module, I think. All right, let's keep going. Go for like another 10 minutes. So, all the spicy. Let's go. All the... Alright, what's the difference when using the Sundara with a shit Modi Magni DAC amp compared with the topping L50 D50? None. Wait, unless there's like major power differences. I'm not familiar with the L50, but I imagine there is. Don't like people look at Syned and they're like, oh yeah, this must mean it's more detailed. No, that's not what that means. Chinese manufacturers other than Hi-Fi Man can't make over ears for their life. We'll see. There's some new ones coming out. One from Moondrop, one from The Audio. So I'm curious to get those in and try those out. The the gold planar ones were not. They did not impress me. The harmonic dyne ones were okay, but the tuning it still needed to be better. So I'm curious what the Moondrop one's going to be like. Yeah, I'm excited to try that one. The Moondrop S8 is more detailed than the The-Audio Monarch. Maybe. It's detailed. I grant that it is detailed. I just find it to be too... That is like Shout City for me. But it is detailed. I will grant that. So maybe. Purchasing recommendations are more bad than good. People put too much emphasis on the opinions of experts rather than coming up with their own based on personal experiences. I would agree with that, but the problem is that people don't have the opportunity to try all this stuff, so they have to rely. I mean, unless they're going to blind buy, they have to rely on impressions, and that can be all over the place. I think the biggest issue with that is that you can't be confident that the person you're reading or listening to, even if it's me, you can't be confident that they care about the same things that you do, or that their understanding of what stuff is supposed to sound like is the same as what your understanding of what stuff is supposed to sound like. So you can't be confident that that's going to match, right? So it's very difficult. But I think that's why also you have to look like if you are going to be taking purchase advice from experts, see what lots of experts have to say. Sure, like you watch my reviews, but also watch Clinical's reviews, also watch Super's reviews. Like, see what even people who like I'm going to confidently disagree with on things, or somebody else might disagree with. It's still worth seeing what somebody else's take is on a thing, right? Because maybe you align more with them than you do with me, for example. Even among our own review team, like we have different impressions of things and different preferences. So yeah, keep that in mind. Cost KSC75 on any headband is one of the most musical headphones you can get. I need to... On any headband? Okay. I need to... Yeah, I'd love to get one of those in. They're cheap, right? They're like $50. That's the same as the Porta Pros, right? Yeah, they're legendary. Okay, let's... AKM is better than Sabre. I don't think it makes a difference. um, there certainly were some older Sabre DACs that had that sort of treble glare harshness to that. Yeah. But on the newer ones, they don't have that. Nothing with a... I haven't heard anything with an ES903 at Q2M or ES903 at Pro that's been glary. KPH30i is the best competitive gaming headphone. I haven't tried that for gaming. It's interesting. Psychoacoustics is perception reality? I think so, especially in music. Okay, so I don't know if this is exactly what you mean by this, but I like this topic because if I say, oh, this is maybe just psychoacoustics that's having this effect, that doesn't mean that that effect isn't actually happening. Like, that doesn't mean that that the experience isn't of a real of a thing, right? It just means that, like, so for example, like, there is a sense in which soundstage is a psychoacoustic effect. Something can actually sound more open, like it is more spaced out, right? But that could just be a psychoacoustic effect, right? That could be like another example, a more concrete example. Okay, I did this when we did the Synad piece, and we were showing that the higher the volume, the less harmonic distortion matters. We had two different versions of the same tone being played with elevated third harmonic distortion, and in both cases it was audible. And the point of that was to show that at the higher volume you couldn't hear it, but at the lower volume you could hear it. And the cool thing about that was when you did that test, when you did that level comparison, when it went to the lower volume where you could hear it, it actually just sounded like the tone itself was different. Even though the fundamental was the same, the fact that it had elevated third harmonic distortion meant that there's a psychoacoustic effect that's causing you to have that perception. So it doesn't mean that it's not real. Let's just report that. There's a high... Yeah, there we go. So I like that. I like that... I mean, you can take that even further. You can say the things that actually are placebo are having a real effect, because placebo can have a real effect. You could go that route too. But I think the more interesting ones are the ones where, like, it's just difficult to identify or separate fundamental tones from low order harmonics. For that on its own is just fun. But yeah. I was quick on that one. So while I was ranting, I was just like, nuke. Okay. Am I crazy for selling LCD-X for DCA Noir? If so, why? I don't think you're crazy. If you like... Oh, have you done it yet, or are you considering doing it? The Noir is more comfortable. It's lighter. It's closed back. It's portable. It's all the intangible things that the LCD-X is not. So if that matters to you, that's not crazy. For technical performance, yeah, the X is clearly better, but that might not matter. And the Noir is also really good for its tuning. So, for like flat out sound quality, yeah, you can get the X can be better. It leads to a better, at least in my opinion, better experience, especially because it can handle any EQ you throw at it. With the Noir, you can also EQ that, but you don't have to. So this is I would also argue with the X you probably don't have to, but it's more like it's more benefited by it. We try the new ZMFO Tour Classic being released. Probably not. Unless someone sends one in, right? Okay, two more questions. You guys are all talking about the M Scaler thing. I need to read this now, but because I have no idea about what that is. So but the AHD 9200 and can't make up my mind on it. Um, Someone keeps asking me to review that 9200, but and yeah, if I get one in, sure, I'll review it. But you know, it's a it's about what's available to review, and then also what the priority is. And yeah, I think if we got one in, it would be a priority. Okay, this is the question that I will end the stream on. Who is your favorite reviewer not from the Headphone Show? I mean, the obvious answer is Critical, right? um, I like a lot of the other reviewers out there. I like Super Review a lot. His stuff's great. I'm friends with Golden. You know, I really like him. Who else? I'm sure there's people whose names I'm gonna, you know, miss. But for written content, I really like VSG's stuff from Tech Power Up. My favorite reviewers are the ones who combine data-driven or measurement analysis stuff with their subjective, takes as well. Metal, obviously, Metal 571, but I mean, he's retired. I see your comment there. That's hilarious. Yeah. Yeah, actually, this is the other thing is like people are like they often talk about like reviewers and they like one reviewer for one thing and one reviewer for another thing, but like um, the reality of a lot of that is that like anybody can do this. There's like you just spend time like reading, learning about stuff, online researching stuff. If you care enough, anybody could be a reviewer. You don't need to be a engineer, or you don't need to have a background in as a musician or anything. It's just based on experiences. And some people are way more focused on the entertainment factor of the whole thing, and I think that's totally fine. That's what they want to do, and in many ways I kind of envy their ability to do that, because as you guys know, I'm dry and boring as shit. But because for me, the interesting stuff is the technical stuff, right? The science of it all. Um, that's what's more interesting to me. And so, yeah, I'm not the entertainer, necessarily, even though I probably should try and do a better job of that. But yeah, yeah, have the olive cage match. That'd be great. All right, guys, it's been over 2 hours, so I'm going to end the stream. As usual, if you guys are looking for the ranking list, and if you're looking for the headphone measurement database stuff, that's linked in the description. It's on the Headphone Community Forum. And if you want more, any of the written content that we produce, that's up on headphones.com on the reviews and guides section. So check that stuff out. Thanks to all of you guys for your awesome questions, especially the spicy ones. Love all of that. And big shout out to all of you, the folks who are here like every time. Last Rhino, Chef Steve, Rob, of course. You guys know who you are. Big thanks to everybody for continuing to hang out and indulge my audio ramblings as I frequently do on the weekends. Yeah, if you guys aren't subscribed yet, for anybody who isn't, I would encourage you to do so. It's always great to have more people joining these as well. Okay, have a good weekend, guys. Spicy. Would encourage you to do so. It's always great to have more people joining these as well. Okay, have a good weekend, guys.